the Pulitzer Center. So they were both funded by.
I live in
Award-winning journalists, like I'm just like, wow, y'all are in the flesh. You've been studying your word. Phenomenal work.
Yeah, we could talk forever about that.
It's your passion. Yeah. And they were just really, oh my God, they got hit now. Yeah, 2 weeks after she left.
Yeah, he was detained for 6 weeks by a real moon, and when he was released, he fled the country. What's her name? I can't remember her name, but I just saw the piece yesterday. But I just saw, I mean, I had stuff in the yards, but I saw yeah, short hair, how it was. I thought it was in the Middle East, maybe. But yeah. I had to go watch over them babies. Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. Questions?
Okay, are you guys ready? Yes, go ahead, Chanel. Go ahead, Raven. Wait, say it again, Raven.
What kind of food do they eat in Uganda?
Yeah, and like, what is the weather like down there?
Weather. Yeah.
And food.
Yeah, so the traditional food crop for Uganda, so people from Uganda are Ugandans. So the traditional food is bananas. Yeah, so bananas. You see the banana, you peel and boil. And boil, yeah. Yeah, so then you can actually, like mashed potatoes. You can actually.
Is it plantain?
Yeah, plantain. Yeah. Yeah, so then you have the sauce like beans, but also most of the African countries eat maize, corn. So you have the flour that comes out of, when you grow, they harvest, they dry, and then they do, the flour, and then you can take the mingle. I don't know if that's the word that you mingle, yeah. So then you eat with some sauce like beans, groundnuts, stuff like that. It is extremely hot in Uganda. I told you, you can see where Uganda is, along the equator.
So it's hot right now?
Sorry?
It's hot right now.
It's hot right now. Yeah, it is. It is. And for rains throughout the year, the 12 hours of sunshine throughout the year. Yeah, so 12 hours of sunshine, 12 hours darkness throughout the year. We have a mid-year dry season. Now the dry season, I'm not sure if the dry season is, what would we call like the dry season? Like, the time when you have no rains. No, not drought.
But it's seasonal.
Yeah. So you have no rains for 1 month. So you don't have green stuff. I mean, so everything is dry. After a month, you have more rains. I hope you get the picture of how things happen. But what you may need to understand is that it's a tropical country. Yeah, we are along the equator. That's why we have 12 hours of sunshine and 12 hours of darkness.
Equator. It's this red dotted line.
Yeah, so right here. And this is where I live. Close to the equator. You can walk to the equator. But of course you will not see it. Your hands are first going to come.
Okay, so what made you want to become a journalist? And when did you guys start? Like, when did you guys become a journalist? What made you?
Yeah, so I studied journalism at university. That's when I started writing stories about conservation. But for me, I wanted to be a voice of my community. Yes, so and I thought probably I would do that through journalism, writing stories that would help my community develop, get out of challenges. And one of the challenges that we have, almost all of African countries,
We also
is
see on the video where there was a sickness, disease going around. You know the video that we watched? Yeah.
yeah, I mean those are the challenges that we have. We have diseases, we have destruction of environment. You have poor water access and stuff like that. And those are the challenges I wanted to write about, to make sure that my communities get the services and so then we can live a good life.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah. Water conservation.
What about water? Who'd you write about?
Yeah, so we do different stories about water. At the beginning of my career as a journalist who writes about water, we started with water at the top, like there's no water, communities have no water. But later, as I grew up in journalism, I realized that the story about water is bigger than what comes out of the top. Yeah, investigations, now you investigate why these communities are not getting water, what are the challenges, how is corruption contributing to water scarcity, all that. But the story about water is actually not so big in Africa. And we depend on water, but you find these stories not there in the media. This is why we are training journalists. This is why we are supporting journalists. We give them grants to make sure that they write more of these stories, so then we can support communities. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you guys came from Africa, right?
I came from Africa.
Yes, you guys traveled here.
Yeah, that's right.
How would you compare the United States and Africa?
Of course, I need more time too. Yeah. That's been here for today. But certainly, I don't know what I can
So
say about
do you
that.
like the United States? I mean, not the United States, but do you like it down here in Atlanta, like Georgia?
Do you like being
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Like, do you like visiting?
Yeah,
people
a good country, have a good press. We can look at, for example, infrastructure in Africa. I mean, roads, poor roads, it would take me some hours to reach here, for example. It took us a few minutes. It depends on what you want to think about. But I have seen that, I told you about bananas. In Africa, you have what you want. You realize, So you wake up, you can eat bananas that you grow. You don't need to buy. You don't need to go to the supermarket. People grow cassava, they grow beans, they eat regularly. You don't need a lot of money to go and look for food to eat. That's what I told you. It depends on what you want to think about. If it is for services, for example, there are poor services, poor health services, poor education services. So it depends on which angle you want to look at. I'm not gonna add more about that. I'm not saying that I don't like my place. I do like Africa, and I like where I was born. I like here where I live, because you have this is a hotspot for biodiversity. You have forests like Congo forests. You have Lake Victoria. You have these lakes. You have the River Nile. You would think that these communities have everything they want, but these resources are not properly exploited. That's the challenge. Yeah. So these are going to answer.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you were talking about the war, and I just wanted to know what caused it, and how was America influenced? Like how was America mixed into it?
Right, that's a great question. The United States has had a presence on the continent forever. since during the colonial era in the 1800s, when Europe was scrambling to colonize parts of Africa, and basically that colonization enriched all of the white countries, the European countries that were colonizing. So resources and materials were constantly being taken out, and that's like a hackney definition of colonialism as we mean the colonial era. When I say American Empire, I mean kind of a second version, or an evolved, not necessarily for the good, version of that colonial structure. And so American Empire, to me, looks like these bases, military bases, that are all over the continent of Africa. It looks like...
May I have your attention? May I have your attention? Please do not write any passes during third block, except for extreme emergencies. Please do not write any passes during third block. Thank you.
So military bases, American corporations that are unregulated, and so they will move their manufacturing. They will move their manufacturing to, say, countries on the continent of Africa, and then they don't have to pay attention to the pollution that they are, pouring out. They don't have to pay people as much. Then we can talk about American government and foreign policy and how it affects what is taking place in these individual countries. Ethiopia is the third highest recipient of U.S. aid in the world, after Israel, and I forget this number 2, but Israel's the first. And Ethiopia's long relationship with the United States has taken it's had many flavors, many iterations. Very early on, American leaders were talking about, well, it's a Christian nation surrounded by all of these Muslim and Arab nations. So it was seen as our Ethiopian people. There are a lot of Ethiopian expats in the United States, and so that kinship has created a relationship. But right now, the United States is doing a lot of secondary work. So Ethiopian soldiers, in exchange for aid, are fighting, say, the Houthi, who are individuals on the Red Sea that are currently causing some trouble for all of the shipping that comes through the Red Sea, which is right, the Red Sea is right here, right? And there's now a way to travel through here to the Mediterranean. So about maybe one of you could Google that for me. How much of the world's cargo is shipped through the Red Sea? It's an insane amount. And so if there's any kind of issue here on the Red Sea, it causes a problem for global shipping and corporations, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of different ways that the United States is involved. When the war was taking place in the north of Ethiopia, the United States said that they were talking to Abiy, who was waging war on his own people. He had just received a Nobel Peace Prize because he made peace with Eritrea after 30 years. This is a 1,000-mile border, right? It's very long. These two countries were at war. They got together and made peace. This new president of Ethiopia did, won a Nobel Peace Prize, and then he got carte blanche. He kind of could do anything he wanted to, and he decided to take out this Tigray leadership, this northernmost region. So that was the war that I was talking about. And the United States could have been involved. There were things that the U.S. could do. They could have said, we're not going to give you all of these weapons and all of this spy equipment and all of this aid. So the United States as an empire has a lot of influence over foreign policy and capitalism and corporations. Yes, ma'am.
So I know that you two are both journalists and you show awareness by writing all of these articles and stories, but what else do you do other than journalism to help with scarcity of food and certain diseases over in Africa?
Wow. Journalism is a big deal. It's a great question. Journalism takes up a lot of time, and I think the premise of the question is what we're doing enough? What else could we be doing that would affect immediate lives? Is that the question?
Yeah, along with the journalism at the same time, like, do you go out and go to the places and help try to get them more water and whatnot? Do you things like that?
Well, for me,
Yeah.
I strongly believe that you cannot do everything. Yeah, you cannot do everything. Like I have an organization, I told you, Water Journalists Africa. So we go into communities, we train communities on how to work with journalists, we train journalists, but there is something that we cannot do. We may not, raise money to extend water to a community. We help them know that they need water, and this is the way they can demand for it. And also, we get their story and write about it. Then the government, those in charge, the policymakers, read about that challenge, and then the policymakers come in to extend water to those guys. But for us, if we want to concentrate on what we're doing to make it 100% perfect, so then we may not again go into other fields.
I think it's an exceptional question in that there's a long conversation within media, particularly in news photography. If you are a photographer, quite often it's a white photographer, on the continent of Africa, and you're taking a close-up of a young black child's face with flies on it, why are you not helping the child? That's the critique that is often charged at photographers and journalists. If you're just observing these individuals and you're not actually helping do the first aid, what's good is this? And I think we have to step back and think about how we consume and generate knowledge of the world around us, which is kind of the practice that we're engaged in. I know basic first aid, and I want to help this person who has, say, a disease that just requires an antibiotic, or a lack of water, they're thirsty, or a person who has a gunshot wound because I'm there writing a story for, I don't know, the CNN, the New York Times, whatever, about this war, this conflict that's taking place. So I have a dual mission to be a human being, to say, this is wrong, this gunshot wound, this curable disease, this lack of water. But I also, my primary role is to say, all of you who are reading what I write, who are seeing the photos that go with it, who are reading this and understanding the complexities of why this water is scarce, of why this child has a